Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest up is our ace reporter, Marc Z. Marc Z, president of Marc Z Legal Staffing. I
Hey,
feel like
John, it's great to be here.
welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs. I don't think welcome back. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Um,
It's always great to be with you too.
so we've talked a lot about the environment, the hiring environment, and the specifics about policies around work from home versus requirements to be in the office. And you're always got your finger on the pulse of it. And as is more the norm today than not, change is always afoot.
So the the breakdown of work from home remotely or work remotely, period, the breakdown from a hybrid schedule, the breakdown from in the office is constantly changing. And that's the challenge right now in the marketplace as people look at opportunities. We had talked about office policies, but at the beginning of the year, a lot of firms and organizations and companies have decided to change those policies. And that's led to a challenge on some hand, in some way. It's very appealing to candidates to go back and work in the office every day. On the other hand, a lot of prospective employees like the idea of going to the office, but really want a hybrid schedule. And then it's communication to the employees, what works and what doesn't. And the challenge is some people want to be in every day. Some people want to have a hybrid schedule. And so the employees want to be accepted in terms of their schedules if they decide to have a hybrid schedule. And now a lot of companies and organizations and firms are having maybe 4 days in and 1 day out. And that's a big difference from 3 days in and 1 day out. And so that is constantly changing. And that's
Which makes it.
affecting the
Sorry.
marketplace and affecting roles.
I was going to say it makes it particularly challenging from an employer perspective, and I think it probably also follows on of what we've seen over the last handful of years, certainly post-pandemic, but even prior to, where it's almost like there's an expectation of individual tailoring. That I've got certain needs, and this is the needs that I want met. And I was talking with somebody yesterday. And effectively, we're in a full employment state still, right? I mean, we've got 3 or 4% unemployment in
Right.
Massachusetts, and by and large, in certain professions, we've got surplus of roles to employees, and so it's sort of forced us into this environment. And I think technology is another piece that has forced us into this. Like, well, I can create my own destiny or my own world or my own construct of what I want to do. And so I could see that being a challenge for firms where they say, hey, we establish a policy, and then they've got some holes that they need to fill in terms of candidates. And, candidates want something that's not consistent with what the policy of the firm is. So what does the firm do? Do they go back and say, well, we can accommodate, we can't accommodate? Now you get into whole issues of equity, and you get into issues of, fairness, and you get into issues of individual expressions of what their interests are, et cetera, et cetera. So it's complicated. And I think that I guess the question is, what's your guidance to your clients? What's your guidance to the firms? I mean, I guess we're about providing guidance to candidates as well. But what's your latest thinking as this dynamic is all over the place?
My latest thinking is when you're putting out the job description, you want to say on the job description, not only this is a hybrid role, but to define what the hybrid role is. Is the hybrid role 4 days in, 1 day out? Is the hybrid role 2 days a month in the or 2 to 5 days a month in the office, once a week in the office? Is it 4 days in, 1 day out? But put that on the description. And I think that's something then when you're reading the description as a prospective employee, you can adhere to that, and everybody adheres to that. Now, there's some professionals and non-professionals that like being in the office every day. And I mean, I'm one of those. I like being in the office if I can every day. But there are others that really like to, and there are other people that really like to be totally remote. In between, there are people that want that balance of having maybe 3 days in, 2 days out. So if a company or a firm really wants somebody in 4 days in, and they should put that in that job description. And that way,
So,
and
a
that's
couple of thoughts.
communicated because
Right.
people hear what they want to hear. And that's what makes things challenging. Not to say that we have flexibility, because that can be confusing.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Even though it's in a job description, I think that's a fallback that and a perspective that an employer can use to say, hey, we put it in there, and if you're looking for a role that is all remote, then you should have seen that in the job description, and don't go through the rigmarole of interviewing for a job that won't be a fit for what your needs are. But we all know that most people don't read anything, let alone the details. And I would imagine you see this more so than most in the field that you're in. The number of people that apply to positions that you might have available that have either limited credentials to fulfill the role, or I can't tell you whenever I've done any sort of recruiting, it's amazing that people apply to a position that they have no background whatsoever on it. But it's just, and I don't know if that's AI. I don't know if that's bots. I don't know, what it is that generates that stuff. But for you, it must be a tremendous frustration because it's a waste of your time to have to vet those candidates. And, they may have the credentials, but they didn't read the details.
Right.
And
The
so,
desire is not to waste anybody's time, the candidate time, the company employer time, client time. And that's the balance that you want to keep. When somebody goes in, everybody is communicating on the same page.
yeah. And again, back to what we started talking about at the top is it's like the landscape is continually shifting. And I think,
Correct.
a word for this decade seems to be adaptability, flexibility and adaptability.
Right.
But again, depending on the firm and depending on the size of the firm, you can accommodate people. But when you start making exceptions, and that's when you get yourself into trouble, right? Because then
Right.
everybody wants an exception.
Right. So it's having a policy, and if the policy is flexible, that's fine. But some places have a hard policy, some places have a soft policy, other places they look at each particular situation because there's a position that applies to, and they want to have the best possible person for that position.
Yeah. And I would imagine as we see, the marketplace changes and there's tightening of demand for employees, we may see another shift towards, the employer or prospective employer having a little bit more of an upper hand. I don't think we're quite there yet, given how many open roles there are and lack of qualified candidates applying.
Well, the other thing is, if you can have a really good candidate, it's like the old days when people work part-time jobs. A lot of employers say we just need a part-time person for this role, and everybody in the firm or the company or the organization knew Jack or Jill would be working part-time in a role. There was nothing wrong with that. That was the role. So
Yeah.
in certain roles, you can say this job will be a particular role. For this role, we will allow 3 days in, 2 days out. And for these roles where we need people to work full-time in the office, for these roles, we need people that would be open to even virtual. You put that on there. And
It's an interesting dilemma. That's an interesting
right.
dilemma, though, because I think part-time used to work, and I've heard it from professionals, people in the legal profession even that say, "Oh, I work part-time 2 days a week, but I'm getting emails 5 days a week or 7 days a week."
Right.
So that boundary creation, I think technology has forced us into, well, we're all essentially on 24/7, whether we choose to respond or not. 24/7 is the question.
Right.
And so it's a lot more complicated than it used to be. Where I think in a lot of professions, or a lot of professional jobs, I guess I'd say, you left the office and you left your work behind until the
Right.
next time you were back in the office. Today,
Correct.
it seems to follow us no matter where you are.
Correct. The lines
So,
of demarcation change. So,
absolutely.
so
Mark,
no, I agree.
always great to talk to you. Always good to get great insight and updates in terms of what you're seeing in the marketplace. And if people want to reach out, listeners want to touch base with you on whether it be their own needs for their firms or candidates, great candidates that want to run through your firm, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Well, John, first of all, Google Marc Z, M-A-R-C, and the letter Z, and we'll come right up. Or marczlegal.com, www.marczlegal.com, 617-338-1300, or a wonderful radio entrepreneurs website. We're right on there, and where all our information is accessible.
Fantastic. As always, this has been the Marc Z Moment with Marc Z Moment. I'm going to try and get it all in there, Mark. And we will be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.